Alright, a few days ago, Zachary Elwood, who I watched play on Live at the Bike a few times, he said this on Twitter. He said an interesting idea would be someone talking about lower variance strategies, which I did just because I had very little money in 2015 and really had to lower the probability of going bust. But he suggests for people shot taking, and you know, either way, it works. And except for my first 625 hours, which were all in Wisconsin about, I've been doing that my whole life. My past like 10,500 hours of poker have been doing that in some form. In order to make sure I never go broke and never come close to going broke and being out of the game, I understand that I make less per hour, but my variance is very, very small. I thought hard about this, and I came up with 6 things I do to make sure this happens. First thing is when you 3-bet extreme hands. What I mean by extreme is not your medium strength hands like king jack, like pocket 8s, pocket 7s, things like that. You want to 3-bet if you're very, very confident you're going to take it down pre with rags as a pure steal, because that money, those small amounts of money will add up and they'll sustain you when you're giving up marginal spots, which I'll get to later. Also, of course, 3-bet hands you're willing to get all in with. And if it comes to that, getting all in pre, that's great. It's a very, very strong hand, and you're going to be a big favorite on an all in. Another thing, which is a lot more relevant today than it was about 10 years ago, is having the lead in hand. So when I started playing in 2012, 2013, loose passive games were very common. And in my opinion back then, position was very, very important. Now, I find a lot more games that are like tight aggressive or even tight passive, and to me position doesn't matter as much. The lead is a much more important factor in games like this. So it's difficult to put a percent on it, but a lot of the hands I play, I have the lead. I might like lead the city some weeks, some months in largest percent of hands, playing with the betting lead, having the initiative. It's okay to play a hand without the lead, but it's going to be a lot more volatile because you have to have a way to win the hand without your cards. You can't just be calling raises and winning when you smash flops. Doesn't happen that often. When you don't have the lead, it's a lot more difficult to win via a bluff. You're going to have to put in a check raise, a raise of some kind. It's going to take more money. When you have the lead, it's just a bet that could take it down without showdown. When you don't have the lead, it's going to be a raise. So it's going to be 2 bets you're putting in to try to win this, and that's why it's more volatile. Another thing is playing small pocket pairs, especially small pocket pairs in early position, especially in certain cities. So in Council Bluffs in Atlantic City and Baltimore, it's not difficult to go multi-way. You know, you could raise 3s under the gun, you know, kind of like medium, not like quite 20 at a 1-2 or 1-3 game, more like 10-12, and expect to go 5 ways. In Council Bluffs, it's actually difficult to go heads up the flops. But you can do that, and when you hit, there's money in there to win. You raise under the gun in Vegas, and a lot of times you're going heads up. And when you have small pocket pairs, you're barely going to hit. So it's going to be difficult for you to win a lot of money with them. There's going to be all the times you miss, and the board is just awful. And even when you hit, there's barely any money out there, and only one possible player to win a stack off of. So those are very volatile in Vegas particularly, but even under the gun or early position anywhere, I have no problem folding them. There have been times in my life I've raised 2s under the gun every single time, certain times of my life, certain cities, and there are times where 2s through 6s under the gun were a fold. No straddle, I'm first to go, I just open folded it. Another thing, which I thought was obvious actually, and then I heard Barry Greenstein say it in one of his interviews with Joe Ingram, play differently against different players. Certain people will pay you off more, play speculative hands against them, not against the better players or the tighter players who won't pay you off. Certain people will fold more easily, bluff them more often than the other people. Some people are just a lot easier to read for you than others. Play more hands against them, play a wider range against them. You shouldn't be playing the exact same cards the exact same ways against every player in your player pool, and this isn't even a you know, lower your variance thing. You should be doing this anyway, but especially if you want to lower your variance and stay in the game longer. I'm going to combine the next 2, and there's one after this. The 2 I'm combining: forego marginal spots, and when you have a nutted hand, you need to win it all in. I'll combine them now. I think a lot of people won't find this intuitive. I think a lot of people would say, oh, you have aces pre, you don't know what to do, you know, play to get all in on the turn or get in now. Err on the side of just shoving now, win a small pot, even if the guy folds, you win small, definitely hand ends pre. You can't do that. Because you're going to be foregoing some marginal spots, some like 50-50 spots, 52-48 spots, you need to win a stack when you have a made hand. You can't have aces and against like a raise and a call, just shove and, you know, pick up that like 40 bucks or something. That's not enough. You need to win a stack with your really strong hands to sustain yourself over longer stretches. When you're folding a little more than normal, a break-even stretch can become very long. A losing stretch can become a losing stretch, you know, plus a break-even stretch. And it could be a while between like winning moments in your graph. How do you handle that? When you have nutted hands, you need to win. There's someone 3-betting people mercilessly at the table and you raise kings or aces and get 3-bet, you can't just shove and take that 3-bet. You have to play it for an all-in. You have to just let him hang himself the whole way. Call his 3-bet pre, check call the flop, check call the turn, check call the river. You have to get all in. You can't be, you know, flopping sets and, oh, I was scared of the gut shot, and just shove and take that small pot. That small pot is not going to sustain you. When you're foregoing marginal spots later on, you need to play that set against the flush draw and get the absolute maximum. You need to be winning the maximum with your nutted hands because you're not going to be playing your medium strength hands and your like low strength hands as much. Think about it this way. You're gonna have some decent hands, some solid hands, and some very strong hands. When you forego some of the decent and solid hands in order to keep your variance in check, how do you make up for that? Well, your very strong hands, you need to be winning the absolute maximum when you get them. So it's not just like shoving kings pre to pick up a small pot. It's not like shoving middle set, hoping the gut shots fold on the flop. No, you need to win the absolute maximum and you need to be winning stacks off people when you get those hands. The last one is also interesting and it's something you could do anyway. You don't only need to do it if you're looking to lower your variance, but there are boards where there's absolutely no good turn card. Say you have 2 red kings and, you know, something happened for you, raise, people fold. Say the flop is 8 of clubs, 7 of clubs, 6 of diamonds. Is there any turn cards you like? How many turn cards do you really like? 8, 7, 6. Of course you like if a king hits the turn. What else? Deuces, trays, is that it? And the deuces, trays, and kings, you don't love it if it's a club, by the way. You don't love anything that pairs the board. You don't love anything that possibly completes a straight. You don't love an ace. It's like deuce, tray, queen, king, and not the clubs. So I'm not saying just, you know, check fold kings on 8, 7, 6, but you have to understand when you're trying to keep your variance in check, when you're behind, it's very difficult to improve. You have kings, like what cards are going to improve you? 2 kings, like that's about it. It might not even improve you enough. And when you're ahead, you're barely ahead. A pair plus a draw has plenty of equity against you. You can't really be in that good of a situation. So I'm not saying fold these hands, but if you don't care about variance, there are times to get all in with kings on 8, 7, 6. There are times to check raise, there are times to bet call, there are times to bet raise. When you're trying to limit your variance, use your blocker bets, use your check calls. You're trying to play for a small pot, you're trying to get to showdown for cheap. So there it is. I think it was 7 ways to limit your variance. You could do them, you could not do them. They're very smart things to do if you're trying to limit your variance. I did these things a ton in 2015 when I first moved here. I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have another plan. I couldn't go broke. I came up with these things and I practiced them. You could do them if you want to limit your variance. If you want to try them out, great. Go ahead, try them yourself.
Yeah, I got it at the stadium in May.